at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, we're one of 12 regional, one of 12 Federal Reserve banks. In our district, the sixth district is the Southeast United States, and that includes Miami. And we also have the Americas Center at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, and we study the Latin American economy. In my group, we look at payments, specifically retail payments, and today we're going to talk about real-time payments. And sometimes you'll hear instant payments, faster payments, real-time payments. And we're going to kind of sort that out today and talk about some of the implementations that have been taking place, 2 examples anyway. And the way that we look at payments in our area is that we study the recent history of payments usage. So our group does a triennial payment study where we really dive deep to see what non-cash electronic payments are processing in the United States. And those would be our card payments, debit card, credit card, prepaid cards. We look at ACH payments as well, and we also look at check and wire. So we're about to talk, in the United States, I should say, the number of payments used is highest in our debit card usage, next credit card. But the value of our payment systems is largely within the ACH network. And it's quite an inverse triangle when you look at the number of transactions compared to the value of transactions. So there's been so much innovation, and fintechs are touching on payments, and there have been some new solutions layered on top of our payments rails, but there really hasn't been a new payments rail invented in a while until Peter. And so that's where I'll kind of pass it over. Peter, tell us about the clearinghouse and your work there.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. So Peter Davey, I lead innovation at the clearinghouse. We're a 166-year-old company that does core clearing and settlement for the United States. We're the only private sector alternative to the Federal Reserve where it comes to clearing and settlement. We run a wire system, an ACH system, an image check clearing system, and in 2017, in November 2017 to be exact, we launched the first real-time payment system in the US, which, as Jessica mentioned, is the first new payment system in the US in over 40 years. In the launch of that system, it was a pure play digital money movement system that works as a single message switch 24/7 by 365 with no off hours, final settlement between the individual parties. So we really felt that this was needed from the perspective of we're all moving to a digital world. This whole conference is about digital transformation in banking, but there really wasn't the tools in the back end to actually facilitate those processes. So that really was the impetus for the development of the real-time payment system. And we are now in the process of onboarding financial institutions domestically in the US. And we're at about 15 financial institutions. We have a few more to go before we reach ubiquity. But we are moving quickly, and we now have about 51% of the reach of all the deposits in the US through the real-time payment system.
Great. Yeah, so in the US, we didn't have a mandate to create a faster payment system. However, the Federal Reserve has historically, even when we created the ACH network, in the late 60s, a research team started, and then a committee was formed, a task force. And that's the same route we went with faster payments from the Federal Reserve perspective. We formed an industry task force and put together some critiques of characteristics of a faster payment system. And today there is a more formalized US Payments Council in place to look at faster payments. The Fed is still analyzing their national settlement service that connects our ACH processing from private sector to public sector. So there may be some changes there. But I should say we also have implemented same-day ACH. So we do have 2 additional windows for same-day ACH, and there may be a 3rd in the future, depending on what infrastructure changes will take place. But Milton, in Peru, tell us how, how it started. How did your faster payments journey begin?
Okay, good afternoon. First, I want to say thank you to Ray and Maria for inviting me here. It's such a very interesting 2 days of exchanging ideas and experiences. First, I have to say that I work at the Central Bank of Peru. I'm Deputy Manager of Payments and Financial Infrastructures. And what we have been in a very interesting process, economic process in Peru. Since 1993, we have been growing at the rate of 5% annually, more or less. Our inflation is around 2%. So economic, financial stability has been very strong in Peru for many years. At the same time, we face some challenges. The main one is that we only have 43% or 44% of the adult population with a banking account. So we have a problem in financial inclusion. The issue here is that the central bank is in charge of payments. And as a recent speech by the head of the CPMI in the BIS said financial inclusion is primarily a payments issue. Everybody starts paying obligation, debts, or paying for utility, and they need how to do it instead of using cash. We do understand that cash is a primal thing, according to Chris, actually, our first speaker. And it's very primal. You have it here in your hand, you have it in your pocket, you know how much money you have, you exchange it quickly to the merchant, no problem in that. And what we have to do first is to allow people to understand how digital payments work, how they are more efficient than using cash, and also that they have to feel safe using digital payments. All these three things are important for them, and it's important for us as a central bank. We are the regulators and supervisors of payments in Peru. And we not only are the policemen of the banks, but also we want to foster digital payments in Peru. And we have been working hand to hand with the ACH in Peru in order to implement in 2016 immediate payments. Still it works only on working days, 8 hours a day. We are planning with the ACH to extend that to 24 hours, 7 days a day, seven days very soon. They have entered in a contract with Vocalink, so Vocalink is providing a very interesting technological platform in order to improve the services that they provide to the banks. And that means also to be able to, by proxy, use, for example, cell numbers instead of account numbers. Now, just to tell you, you have to memorize or to have the information of 20-digit account number in order to send money to another bank, to a client in another bank. So we have been working with them. Also, in 2016, we implemented with the Bank Association electronic money solution, which is called BIM. And this solution is an interesting one because it's the first time we see around the world a completely, totally interoperable solution. And all banks cooperate with that. We have one provider of the service of clearing, and this company has all the information and all the, they manage all the accounts in electronic money, so it's very simple to send money from one account to another. However, electronic money hasn't been very successful yet in Peru. The use case is still to be built. But in the case of immediate payment, we have seen a very rapid growth. Nowadays, there are almost the same number of operations in immediate payments. It's similar to the number of operations of checks in the ACH. So we see that in the future, immediate payments is a very big thing in the landscape of the payments market in Peru.
So for immediate payments and real-time payments, I think you touched on e-money and how that has been in place for some time. And I wonder if these new immediate real-time payment rails might enable some of those overlay services. We've talked about Zelle in the United States is kind of an overlay service. So talk to me about products and services that might be successful with these new rails.
So, one of the things that I think, at least from the U.S. perspective, that we tried to do with the new real-time payments rails is make them available to any use case that people could think of. We believe that the immediacy of money is important. I think Milton has highlighted very well that it actually enables financial inclusion. And the idea around real-time payments was to create something that worked like cash. So as soon as a transaction is done, the other party has a fully reconciled transaction. Which, as you can probably understand, with all of the new advancements in technology and all of the new players in the marketplace on the payment side, they all strive to do something that works more like cash. Now they have a back-end system that can support that. So in terms of the use cases, certainly P2P is one that can benefit from it. Although the values in P2P being relatively low don't necessarily need the immediacy of settlement as you do in other things. However, in the US, folks have started leveraging Zelle, the Visa Direct MasterCard Send networks to do immediate payouts for things like insurance claims. Those, especially as they get into higher dollar limits, do require the immediacy so that all parties are made whole and you don't have people waiting multiple days. I think the other piece that I would say that's unique in the US is we introduced, it's a credit push system, which makes it so that everybody always has control of the funds on the account holding side. But the other thing is we introduced this thing called request for payment. And we believe that this request for payment, which is a non-obligatory ask of money from one party to another, think about an invoice presentment or a bill pay presentment that now can be done on the same payment network as the actual payment that comes back through. We believe that bill pay and other use cases around B2B payments will likely be the large users of this system as we continue to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the case of Peru, we have seen a rapid growth of the firms which are called Fintech. Nowadays, we think that we have 130 firms, and mainly basically on payments, financing, and money exchange. Also, banks are very much interested in buying technology, developing technology, and we now have at least 3 or 4 wallets provided by banks. But the banks understand that they have to have an interoperable solution, and the idea is that in the future, in the near future, this immediate payment solution may help to solve this interoperability problem. Of course, there is a price always, and pricing is very important, and we'll see how it works for the ACH also.
Mm-hmm. So one thing we get asked a lot is, with the implementation of a new payments rail, what's going to happen to the old payments rails? Is there still a use case for those?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially in the US where you consider ACH has been largely used for recurring type payments, things that don't require as much immediacy, pre-scheduled payments like payroll, we don't see those migrating in a huge way over to any new payment system. And in fact, the real-time payments rail in the US wasn't designed to really replace another payment system. As I kind of mentioned at the beginning of it, it was really meant to be the next digital system in the world that would allow for immediacy of payments. So I don't see huge amounts of payments that would move over where the payment system works for those payments. Where I do see it is, especially in the payroll, when you think about the on-demand economy and immediate payouts for working a few hours and getting that money into your account, or when you need to move money in an off-hours situation, past banking days, past banking hours, that's really where a lot of those use cases start to pop up and drive initiatives on the real-time payment rails. So I think any time where you think about immediacy of funds or really closing out a transaction, that's really where I think you're going to start to see the benefit of leveraging those rails versus traditional rails. But we believe, and for right or for wrong, payment systems continue to exist. We don't do a very good job of decommissioning them. So while I like to see checks disappear in my time, I would also like to see the rest of the growth in electronic payments continue to grow, including real-time payments.
Just real quick, in the United States, only in 2016 were debit cards more adopted than checks, so very recently. So we're still heavily reliant on checks, although Peter and I do not write checks.
That's correct.
Well, in our case, it's the same thing. I mean, when you introduce a new payment instrument, always takes time for people to start using it and then be convinced that it's there is a solution for their needs for payments. But I think, like them, that checks is probably going to get even more out of use. Immediate payments is a solution for most of them. And also, I would say that the basic problem is that sometimes banks and other financial institutions, they have what I call a legacy mentality. They try to maintain, they are able to change the technology, the computer, the servers, etc., but they try to think and to fit everything into what they think it has to be the role of a bank. So, for example, we introduced credit transfers many years ago, 2002, 2003, but we found out that banks didn't actually explain to the bank teller how it works. So when a client wanted to do something, they couldn't help him. So we started with the banks, with the Bank Association, and many banks, a campaign in order to explain people how it works, and they started to grow. And then now it's growing 30% a year. So it's important for everybody to understand that it's not only the servers, the technologies, the way we think, the way we approach things. And actually, I would like to say that here, in these last 2 days, I learned that it's true. Financial literacy is a problem. But we have to give people enough information to take a decision, financial decision, in a very simple form, so they will understand and they will feel empowered by the information we give. If we accompany the service, the financial service, plus information, clear, transparent information, also in pricing, then the client will feel more comfortable using the banks.
Yeah, so there's a lot to consider with your faster payment strategy, and it's still, we're early in implementation. I can guarantee next year, the conversation we have will probably be very different with the numbers and just where we are. I think that the needle is going to move quickly. One thing to be said, especially from the U.S. perspective, is that banks truly are the gateway to payment systems, real payment systems, not just the overlay wannabe payment systems. So, the understanding how payments work at that settlement level is so imperative. And so just any words for the audience, final words about their faster payments strategy and understanding that deep down settlement.
I think one of the things that I would highlight for the group is financial institutions are starting to open up the ability to leverage them in new ways, using APIs, driving your technologies forward. So if you're a fintech out there and you've been frustrated by your financial institutions in the past, there's a lot that is changing about the financial institution environment to enable turnkey solutions for fintechs to play, for other companies to play in. And I think it's going to become more apparent to have a partnership with financial institutions to be able to drive these technologies forward, since they are the ones who are responsible for the final settlement of transactions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, basically, we all know that banks, when they see fintech is succeeding in the market, probably they will buy it. It happens in Peru. They bought a company related to payments. The biggest bank just bought it. And, well, that's one way to do it. Another way is they developing also their technologies. But at the same time, the use case is very important. For example, we have Rappi in Peru. Many Latin American fintechs are going to Peru to provide services. And Rappi is a use case for people who don't want to get out of their house. They want to buy something, they send a Rappi. And they pay with the phone. Mm-hmm. So it's simple. And they are providing a service of payments also. So we'll see that develop in the future more, and probably they may also use the service of the ACH in immediate payments in the future. We'll see.
Yes, we will see. Well, I thank you so much for sharing your story in Peru. I can't wait to see what the future phases will bring, and I know Peter will have some bigger numbers next year. So thanks so much for having us, and look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tip.